Hi there, I'm Jennifer Ferguson with Artistic Painting Studio, and today I just wanted to talk about glaze and try to explain some stuff so it's not such a mystery when you're trying to figure out what glaze to use for what project. We've got a few glazes that we work with. We're going to be talking about Modern Masters and the Lifestyle Finishes, which is under the Golden's Artist Colors line. And also one of the glazes that I carry myself, which is under my brand, ArtsSyVille Embellishments. The first thing about glazing is prep, okay? And it really does matter the surface that you work on. So make sure that you're on 100% acrylic, okay? Paint, which is going to give you a substrate that is going to help the glazes work better, okay? If you're doing furniture or working on another project and you're working in chalk paint, definitely not a great surface to glaze upon. Chalk paints are porous, they're matte, and they're just not going to give you any great open time no matter how wonderful of a glaze you pick, okay? So if you are working on chalk paint, you're going to want to go ahead and put down a layer of a top coat. If you're working in like DIY paint, then it would be called their big top. I'd probably put 2 coats of big top down before I would start to glaze. It's going to give you a barrier level and allow the glazes to work much better. But if you're working on a large surface and you're working on a wall or even a piece of furniture, just go ahead and you could do 100% acrylic, and that is going to give you a great base to start on. Also, not just the paint, but give it some dry time, okay? Don't paint it today and try to glaze this afternoon because that paint isn't really completely dry or what I'd call cured, okay? So give it a couple of days. The longer time you allow that paint to dry, it's going to cure and become a harder, more durable surface, and it's going to be better to glaze upon. A product that we also carry here at the studio is Bondago. Bondago is made by Perfetto, and it is like a primer paint all-in-one and was designed to be glazed upon. So it's going to dry to a nice, great hard surface and give you a wonderful substrate for glazing. So those are your options for your base. Okay, now we're going to start talking about glaze and what's the difference between all the different glaze options. Under the brand of Modern Masters, they have 2 glazes that we carry, and one is called Furniture Cabinetry Glaze, and the other one is just called Wall Glazing Cream. Okay, are they both called cream? Yes, they're both called cream. They are a product that is completely transparent, but hopefully you can see this. They look milky white in the container, okay? But once you apply this to the surface, if you didn't add anything to it, it is going to be completely clear and you will see nothing. The whole idea of a glaze is to give your color working time, or what is also called open time, so that when you apply it to the surface, you have time to come back, manipulate it, tool it, work with it, wipe it back off. So for like an aging technique, and you've got control of it, okay? If you're not adding glaze to your colorants or paint, you won't have that time to play with it. So it gives us that time to create looks and finishes that we want to do. Let me grab right here, okay? I basically love to always color all my glazes, which are considered, they're called glazing cream colors, okay? So they're meant for their glazing creams, otherwise known as a colorant or possibly even a universal tint. That's the coloring system I like to do personally. I feel that it keeps everything more translucent or transparent versus working with adding paint to your glazes, because paint is an opaque medium, and even if you add paint to a glaze, it's definitely going to make it more translucent, but it's never going to be transparent. But it is another option, okay? And Modern Masters, you can add paint to the glaze, and it will work. I just prefer, okay, the glazing color or the glazing cream colors or a colorant. So let's talk about the differences and then we'll talk about tinting them, okay? So you have your furniture glaze and your wall glaze. Okay, basically the wall glaze is a thicker medium and is designed to go vertical. It's meant to hang on a vertical surface. So if you're doing your walls and you're glazing up, a wall surface, it's not going to sag. It's not going to start dripping. It's designed to hang there. Okay, so it will stay right where you put it. It will allow you to tool it. Okay, so that means coming back with a C sponge or a terry rag or neon, whatever you're using to tool it and to create the movement, the depth, the design, whatever it is you're doing to it. It allows it to stay there and be able to do that to the surface. So it's a thicker medium. And when you're mainly doing kind of like wall finishes, it seems like we're leaving a little bit more behind on the wall. Okay, so it is a thicker medium and designed for that purpose. Furniture glaze is thinner. Okay, this is more designed to be completely sheared down to a really, really thin layer. So it's great for your furniture application. It's great for marble, wood graining. All of those are going to be a more sheer application that might take layer after layer to accomplish. So furniture glaze is your best product to use when doing those types of applications. But it can make it even more complicated than that. We can mix the two together at just about any ratio we want to create the glaze we need for our project. So an example, let's say I'm going to do a piece of cabinetry or furniture where I'm maybe not going to shear it down to where it's so paper thin. I'm going to be leaving more of the glaze into the grooves and character of the furniture plate. Say it has molding or more ornate. So there's more glaze that's going to sit in those lower spots. I would prefer to make a mixture of 75% furniture glaze with 25% wall glaze. That way it's going to be a little bit thicker and going to allow better for that technique of more glaze to sit into the lower areas of the project. And same for if I'm doing a wall treatment where maybe I am going to shear it down a little bit more and I don't have to be fussing about how much I'm tooling it or working it on the wall surface. I can mix these together as well, where I could go 75% wall and add 25% furniture. Now, I'm giving you ratios that I play with a lot of times, but you also could go 50-50 with these. I think the more you get into glazing, the more you're playing with it and you're working on different projects, you're going to get a feel for the ratio that you might need for that particular project. But they mix together well. There's no issue with it. Anytime I'm mixing up my glazes, let's see if we have one of those containers handy. Since I wasn't prepared to show you this. Okay, these are just little plastic containers that we get from, I want to say it's, what is it, the food industry. So like a restaurant supply place. They're not as airtight as I would like, but being that it's glaze, it does last a long time even in these. But this is what I'll mix them in, and then I'll write on the lid, okay, what it is. Now this is not glaze in here, so it says something completely different, but at least I know what I've mixed up together, what the percentages is of both of the different products together, and I'll have that ready for my next project, okay? Now, the same is very true, okay, of everything I've just explained as for the Lifestyles Golden's Artist Color Glazes, okay? They just call their glaze either glazing medium, which would be like your wall glaze, your full-bodied glaze, or they have sheer glazing. Now this again is equal to the furniture glaze, where you do your marbling, your wood grain, and your furniture and cabinetry projects. Again, they can be mixed together at any ratio to create exactly the glaze I need, okay, for that project. The main difference between these two companies is the Golden's Artist Colors is more matte, okay? So this glaze is going to dry down to a lower sheen. It's going to be closer to somewhere between a matte and a low sheen, okay, a very low sheen. Whereas Modern Masters is going to dry probably satin or a little lower than satin. So I'm going to pick one over the other because of what I'm working on. So if I'm doing something that's more of an old world type finish and I want my glaze to be a little bit more on the matte side, I'm definitely going to choose Golden's Artist Colors Glaze, okay? And if I'm working over my foils, over metallics, I'm going to go with Modern Masters because it's going to help that base coat or whatever I'm working on to stay shinier, okay, or more brilliant. Now, there's one other glaze to throw into the mixture here and confuse you even more, and that is the glaze that I have under my brand, ArtsSyVille Embellishments, which is a gloss glaze. And the reason that we're carrying this is because we do a lot of foil finishes and metallic finishes, and if we want this to stay as brilliant as they are, we're going to go for my glazing medium because it's going to stay more gloss. All the other ones are going to knock the sheen of your foils down a little bit more. So it gives you another option to at least have, okay? The next thing is coloring our glaze. I hope you guys are staying with me. If there are any questions regarding this video, you know you can always put a comment down or write me a comment, okay? And I will definitely get back to you and answer your questions. That's one great thing about YouTube is we can definitely respond to you. So when it comes to coloring, my base recipe for using any of these glazes, okay, is it's 1 cup of glaze to approximately 3 tablespoons of colorant. And I'm going to call that a nice medium saturation of color that is going to give you enough pigment to play with and give you the pigment that you're looking for on your project. So even after you brush it onto the surface and you come back and tool it, let's say you're just going to pounce it with a terry rag, that there's still going to be color left, okay? It's not going to be once you pounce it that it becomes so sheer that you barely see anything. Now, with that being said, that is like your starting point of where I normally color to, okay? Now, if I'm looking for something that I need just a very, very sheer color to go over, where I'm basically saying maybe a toning glaze, where I just want a little bit of color over it, I might bring it down to 2 tablespoons or lower. And then there's times where I'm looking for a lot of color, where I might go up to 4 tablespoons. So you can adjust your recipe depending on what you're doing and how much color you're looking for from the glaze itself. Now I'm going to say that when we've done some really dark, heavier glazing projects, it's normally not achieved in 1 layer. It's normally 2. So don't think you're going to continue to add more and more color to your glaze and get it really, really deep and dark and be able to do some of the techniques that you see that have a very heavy glaze on there. Most of the time it's been done with 2 applications where you do a layer of glaze, let it completely dry, and then do another layer of glaze to build that depth. Okay. If you decide that you're going to tint with paint, the base ratio is normally 1 part paint to approximately 4 or 5 parts glaze, okay? So if I had a quart of glaze, that means I'd be adding a cup of paint, and that's a 1 to 4 ratio. If I'm doing a 1 to 5, that means I'm going to be adding less. Then I start doing it by ounces, so it's easier for me to calculate. Okay, I don't have a calculator in front of me. But the more paint you add to your glaze, the faster it's going to dry, okay? So you want to play with your ratios to get you the pigment and the color you're looking for with the least amount of paint being added. The more paint you add, if you start getting like paint 1 to 3 ratio to your glaze, it's going to dry even faster. If you do a 1 part paint to 2 part glaze, it's going to dry even much faster. But there are times where you're doing small surface area and you can go ahead and still manipulate your glaze even with it drying faster. Okay, if you're going for your walls and you're doing a larger project, you want to keep the ratio as low as possible. Be back at that 1 to 4, 1 to 5, because it's going to give you the maximum amount of open time. Okay, I really do think that is probably some really good base information for you on working with glazes and how to mix them together. And like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. Just leave a message here on the video and we'll get back to you. Make sure to hit the subscribe button so that you will know every time we have a new video coming out. Thank you for joining me.